what Arizona got, almost close to $1 billion, was decided based on number of households which currently doesn't have high-speed broadband connectivity. So based on the number of households which doesn't have 100 Mbps download speed and 20 Mbps upload speed was put into this pot, and based on that funding assessment, we got almost close to $1 billion. The target for this BEAD funding, connecting every single unserved and underserved household. I really want to emphasize on this part. Historically, what happened in broadband funding, normally internet service provider will come in, apply for funding in a census block or census group level, and then they will pick and choose mostly which area makes sense for internet service provider to operate, maintain the network, and make sure this network is sustainable going forward in the future. This is the first time in the history of broadband funding, it was developed in the household level. That means FCC currently have a broadband map up and running as a broadband BDC map, which is the next version map from the FCC 477, which shows every single household, not only in Arizona, it's all 50 states and 6 US territories, also houses on tribal land, which need to be connected through this funding. So that means within a project area, when a subgrantee or potential subgrantee applies for BEAD funding, they have to offer a proposal which will connect 100% of the household within that community. This funding makes sure that we are not leaving a single household behind. Doesn't matter what the location of the household, doesn't matter if it's in a dense area or if it's in a area where there is only one household in 10-mile radius. So that's the most important part. Of course, we would like to promote digital equity. The infrastructure only will provide a path for connectivity, but digital equity is most important part after the infrastructure is there, that teaches us how to participate into the daily internet applications, including telemedicine, distance learning, and all other application our society needs at this point. We also would like to address affordability. All the BEAD funding recipients or potential subgrantees have to agree that there are two options in the BEAD planning for Arizona and all other 50 states. One is low cost option plan and the middle class affordability plan. So one plan is only for 100 Mbps download and 20 Mbps upload. And another plan is 1 gig fiber symmetrical speed. So they have to comply with our benchmarking before they apply for BEAD funding. Again, these are all a scoring criteria mentioned in Arizona's volume 2. Happy to send you another link if you didn't get a chance to look into the approved volume 2. Nope. Okay. So here's the tentative timeline. Again, we are still working on the timeline. There are a lot of thought process going into the timeline, but as of today, these are the timeline we have. The initial proposal, volume 2, was approved by NTIA on August 1st, 2024. And what that does, that puts us on a short clock of 1 year or 365 days for our final proposal. Final proposal is the last step before we start signing contract with potential subgrantees and deploy the $1 billion. And what final proposal includes nothing just but that who got grant in what area. So what we did, we went ahead, distributed the whole state of Arizona in 66 project areas. As we committed before, that our tribal areas is going to be its own separate individual project area. So we kept all the 22 tribal entities or tribal lands as a separate project area, wanted to make sure that tribal government or tribal citizens are getting an option to build their own infrastructure, apply for BEAD funding, and basically own that infrastructure and operate their infrastructure from their standpoint when it comes to data sovereignty. It's a huge priority for us. It's a huge priority for the governor. So we just wanted to make sure that is getting reflected into this process. So when you look at the project area, you will see every single tribe is its own project area. So we are right here on the second step where the initial project area is currently drafted and published on our website. You should have an access to our map. We can pull up the map after the presentation and answer any question. It's open for you right now to check that which household on your tribe is currently eligible for BEAD funding and how can you apply and how can you provide feedback on the project area. So we're here right now in the market sounding phase. This is where we're gathering feedback from our tribal entities, local government partner, and the internet service provider. And then what's coming almost in parallel is the pre-registration process. I want to really emphasize on the BEAD pre-registration process. It's a very important step for the ISPs, tribal ISPs, and tribal government who would like to participate into the BEAD funding. This is where we accept or evaluate all the documentation regarding compliance. That means your tax documentation as a tribal government or ISP, your SAM.gov registration, your qualified personal, your matching fund where you are securing that 25% matching. So all those sort of documents need to be uploaded and reviewed by State Broadband Office before even you can apply for BEAD funding. This is required by NOFO. So that means a subgrantee or potential subgrantee cannot apply for BEAD funding if you are not pre-approved by State Broadband Office. Again, I want to emphasize the compliance document need to be pre-approved, and you need to be pre-approved by State Broadband Office before even you apply for the grant funding. This is a continuous process, and we will not close this process until 3 days before we open round 1 of the application, so that anyone can participate at any point. I do understand that would be a slew of documentation need to be uploaded, and our offices stand ready to help you evaluate those documents, provide you answer and support so that you can you can participate in that process. If you are a tribe and you are authorizing an ISP to apply on your behalf, you don't have to do that. Only the tribal only the ISP you are authorizing can go through this process, get themselves approved. But what they will be needing a support letter or some kind of clarification letter that you are authorizing them to apply for this. Once we go through the market sounding and pre-registration, we'll finalize the project area, and we are planning to open the subgrantee selection process in the beginning of December. I know it's not an ideal time given that Christmas and Thanksgiving will be right around the corner, but we are in a short clock. As I mentioned, it's a 365-day short clock. We have to distribute the $1 billion, staple all the proposals which will get approved or not get approved, and send it to NTIA by August 1st, 2025. So we have to run this process at that time. The whole final proposal, basically the redacted version of the proposals from the subgrantees, will be open for public comment for 1 month before we submit the final proposal to NTIA. So all of this process, once again, need to be completed by August 1st, 2025. Kelly, next slide. So this is a methodology how we divided the whole project area. So we took a cost modeling approach. So Arizona currently has 174,000 households, and all 174,000, that including the household in tribal land, are currently eligible for BEAD funding. What we did, we took existing infrastructure, that means middle mile, we took terrain, we took existing assets, that's mean tower and other assets in the surrounding areas, socioeconomic conditions, condition to run this network, and competitiveness into consideration, and divided the whole project area. It totally does not align with what we came up with for tribal entities, because as we said, the tribal entities, we did not divide this into separate project areas, still the same project area. And Arizona is the only state so far keeping the tribes as a separate project area. So we normally started our analysis in the census block level, then combine them together for the project area. We also analyze the operational viability of this project. That means if we invest X amount of money, build fiber to every single household, what is the operational viability of that? What is the take rate? Can this network sustain for next 30, 40 years? What's the possibility of that? That was also considered when we divided the project area. So, and we tried not to exceed the number of $50 million to make sure that project areas are within that boundary, so that the ISPs or tribal entities can provide that 25% matching. There is a requirement of 25% matching, which need to be provided from the potential subgrantees unless otherwise identified. So we want to make sure they can provide this matching. So every single aspect was considered before we deployed this funding. Sorry, we deployed the project areas. So here is a snapshot of what's currently eligible for BEAD funding. So we have 94,000 almost household unserved household, which is eligible for BEAD funding. And we have approximately 80,391 underserved household, which is eligible for BEAD funding. So altogether, that's 174,299 location currently eligible for BEAD funding in the state of Arizona. Out of that, the total eligible BSL, means broadband serviceable location or addresses on tribal lands on all 22 tribes eligible for BEAD funding is 10,069 locations. And we have 8,025 community anchor institute, which is eligible for BEAD funding in the state of Arizona. Out of that, 488 community anchor institute is on tribal land. Again, this was all derived from the FCC broadband map and the federal funding data. So this is not a data we came up with. It directly came from federal government, and we implemented this. Now, we basically extracted those numbers from there. You as a tribal entity has an option to apply for cost quest license and basically extract the same information from there. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is a snapshot that in every tribal level, how many community anchor institute currently you have on your land, which is eligible for BEAD funding. You don't need to take a note of that. It's just for review. We'll post this slideshow on the website so that you can download it. Yes. You're showing 17 CAIs here. Right. 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 They are eligible, but the BEAD NOFO says that CAIs are not a mandatory distribution field for BEAD. That means CAIs are a scoring criteria. When a tribe is supposed, to give you an example, if Gila River had 100 location and 17 CI instead of 1 and 17, then our commitment to you would be make sure that 100 location is connected. And then based on the funding availability for Gila River or the whole tribal land, you can either connect like whole 17, you can connect 1 CI, you can connect 15. So that's a scoring criteria, but priority would be the unserved and underserved households. Yes, right. The question from Gila River was the number of CIs in every single tribal land. Does that need to be connected, or is it eligible for BEAD funding? So what I was saying it's eligible for BEAD funding, but the mandatory commitment from BEAD funding is connecting unserved and underserved household. Then potential any leftover funding will go towards the CI. So CIs are the scoring metrics in volume 2. They are not a mandatory field which we need to fulfill. So if a tribe put together a plan, if we allocate X amount of number for a tribe, dollar value, and tribe put together a plan where they can connect all their CI and all their unserved and underserved household within that number, absolutely yes. But the priority would be connecting underserved and unserved household. We cannot hold any subgrantees, any tribal subgrantees or non-tribal subgrantees liable to connect all the CIs. It's maximum amount of CI will get maximum amount of point. So if you look into our volume 2, out of the 100 point, 3 point is coming from how many CI you are connecting within that project area. Okay. This is the breakdown of the BEAD funding, number of unserved and underserved household on tribal land. So I would really emphasize on this slide. This slide shows how many households you have on your land currently, as per the FCC map, shows served. So that's the column number 1, the served BSL. Then I would ignore the residential BSL. It's a mixed bag. Let's go to the number 3 and 4, which is unserved and underserved. Those are the households currently eligible for BEAD funding. So it is very important to look at that. The rest of the columns, those are the current state and federal funding, which was committed or currently under construction on tribal land. So it is very important to look into that section. And the reason it's very important, because if any of those funding on your tribal land was applied without your consent, this is the time where your tribal council or tribal government can write a letter to us, and we would be able to add that into the BEAD bucket. So this is very, very important. This is the one last opportunity. The moment we open round one of the application in December, we cannot add any more location. So this is the last chance where you can write a letter saying to State Broadband Office, copying NTIA, saying that we never authorized this federal funding provider apply on our land without our consent, and we are happy to add that into the BEAD funding.
So Sandy, this is Joe Valandra.
Yes.
I would like to emphasize that point, if you don't mind.
Please.
It's important because not many other states that I'm aware of are giving that option to tribes. There's many places where other funding mechanisms through the FCC or the USDA or other pots of money have been made available to mostly incumbent providers, and they've applied for that. And it may many times has covered tribal land without tribal consent. But the importance of that, as Sandeep is saying, is that if there's a conflict, uh, because it looks like there's already federal funds that are being expended over your land to provide service, then BEAD money is not available to your tribal lands. But the most important point, and I'm just emphasizing what Sandeep said, is that if those other applications for whatever program through FCC, USDA, wherever, did not receive your consent, that is the tribe's consent to do that, then Arizona has said that if that consent is not given and you verify by a letter from the tribal council, tribal chairman, a resolution, whatever the appropriate vehicle is for the tribe, that there was not consent given, then that conflict goes away and you become eligible for BEAD. So that's a very important thing to look at the mapping tools that are out there to identify the conflicts that you can. I can tell you that both the Arizona State Broadband Office and Tribal Ready Stand are ready to help you make that determination, help you figure out what the conflicts may be, if any, so that that as much of your land as possible remains eligible for BEAD. So that's just a very important point we're seeing all over the country, from Alaska to you name it, that there are many projects that have been funded that the tribe is unaware of because they were never asked for permission or never asked to participate, therefore no consent, and it's causing many problems in other states, whereas Arizona is giving tribes the opportunity to remove that conflict now. It's just a very important point.
Thank you, Joe. Ophelia, are you able to unmute and share what you put in the chat?
Hi, I pressed the buttons. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I just thank you for providing that opportunity for tribes to be able to submit a letter. I just, you could see Havasupai down there says we have 106 served homes and zero unserved and zero underserved. But I can guarantee that I don't have 106 homes that have functioning internet. I might have 8 homes in the entire canyon that have personal Starlink. So just an example. And we're definitely interested in trying to figure out the situation on why we have 0. So thank you.
Yes, I would say again, this is Joe Valandra, that one of the reasons may be that the incumbent provider in the area, whomever that may be, has reported to the FCC through the mapping process, through the 477 forms that are filed on a regular basis with the FCC, that they are providing service there. I mean, think of it like when you see the ads from, and I'm not singling these providers out, but you see the ads from AT&T or Verizon, and they show the whole U.S. is blue or the whole U.S. is red. That's an example on a macro scale that they are alleging that they're providing service to the whole country or to specific areas. In over the last 20 years that I've been working in this area, I've had several discussions with the major providers about their maps and how they can be claiming service. The answer 15 years ago was, well, we're planning to provide service, so we show it on our map as part of our plan. Lately, they've been sort of backing away from that, but that if they serve one home in an area, oftentimes they'll say that again, it's part of their plan to serve all the homes in the area. And that's probably true for many incumbent providers. So that's how that happens, but it's not correct. And there is a challenge process that each of the tribes can go through to make sure that all of the homes within your boundaries, within your service area, are included in the map. The state of Arizona and Tribal Ready again stand ready to help you with that. But it's very important that all of your homes, all of your broadband serviceable locations are included on the map for one overriding legal reason that under the federal law that's provided these fundings, if the BSL, if your grandmother's house is not on the map, Arizona by law cannot provide funds to connect it. So if the individual houses, and I always use my grandmother or my aunties as examples, if their homes are not on the map, then legally Arizona cannot provide funds to connect them. That's an important point to keep in mind. So as you review these maps, look at the number of reported BSLs, served and unserved. It's very important in the short time frame that we have to get that as accurate as possible so that the eligible tribes, the eligible BSLs on tribal land can receive as much money as possible from BEAD as part of this process. So I just really wanted to emphasize that again, along with the conflict issue. So thank you. And if there are questions, Sandeep or Kelly, you'll have to relay them to me because I can't hear them.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, yes.
Maybe we'll just change mics for Sandeep. Hold on.
Okay. Thank you so much for your clarification, Joe. I think that was very important. One thing I also want to highlight that what Joe mentioned, this is an overbleeding issue on the FCC broadband map. What's happening, we have been notified by a few tribal entities that there are ISPs who are shooting outside from tribal boundary and basically mostly wireless networks and claiming that they're covering household on tribal land. That's technically not how it works for FCC map. So if you didn't provide any consent, it doesn't matter. For fiber connection, they need to cross your land, so they need written communication. But mostly what's happening for wireless is it can be any big name wireless provider or local mom and pop shop. They're shooting outside from tribal land and covering tribal household, which is hindering BEAD funding for the tribal entity. So if you're noticing something like that, please let us know. What we are going through right now is a very important step. So in partnership with Arizona's Commerce Authority Broadband Office, we contracted with Tribal Ready. Joe is, as you mentioned, the CEO of the Tribal Ready. They're going to go to every single 22 tribe, and they're going to ask you a series of questions. Again, up to you if you want to answer or disclose those information. Those are mostly answer questions like, do you want to apply for BEAD funding? This is the funding we are seeing on your land. Did you provide consent to them? So that questionnaire will make sure that we have enough information to open up that area where the funding was applied without your consent. So that's the most important thing. So we would like to complete those engagement by end by mid-November, and we want to basically integrate your feedback into the final map. So it is very important from a tribal government standpoint to provide us those clarifications, so that we want to make sure that we are adding the addresses which is currently blocked by other federal funding, state funding, or any other private provider, which was done without your authorization. So it is very important to provide us this feedback in next 1.5 months.
Sandeep,
Yes.
quick question. I'm not familiar with the ABDG.
That is our own capital funding project, CPF money. So that's what we call it, Arizona Broadband Development Grant.
Thank you. This is Craig from Gila River. The other thing I want to, I guess, mention for those companies that are regulated and get other USF funds, you will also want to evaluate those funds and how those funds impact BEAD and what you will want to apply for related to BEAD. Because for our situation, we want to continue to get those ongoing funds that last for many years rather than just BEAD. So you'll want to evaluate your own situation and how your other USF funding would impact BEAD funding.
Yeah, and a lot of the tribes in Arizona currently are waiting for TBCP round 2 result. You can still apply for BEAD funding. Just because you applied for TBCP doesn't mean you are going to get TBCP. It's a hugely competitive process, and this is a guaranteed funding for you. So you can apply for BEAD funding later on. If you get TBCP funding, you can always compare and let us know which one is the better from financial standpoint and choose either one of them. Or you can mix and match. Not mix and match from financial standpoint. You can, if you have 200 household, you are covering 75 household using BEAD and 125 household using TBCP. That's an option as well.
And I guess just to maybe clarify what my comment was, so our ongoing USF and EACAM is another example of that, that's kind of ongoing USF funding that also helps fund operations and not just the capital build, whereas BEAD and some of the other funding just funds the capital build, and then you've got to figure out ways to, whatever you bill your customers to then pay for your operations. So for us, it made more sense for us to not fund our locations using BEAD within our community because we want that ongoing funding that also funds our operations.
Thank you. So this is a breakdown on the county level. This is not technically applicable to to the tribes, but this slide will be uploaded. So if you want to see, apart from tribe, if you're part of multiple county or one county, what kind of unserved and underserved household and federal funding they have. Just an FYI that tribes are the only entity in the United States who can actually complain or who can actually submit an appeal against the existing federal funding which was applied to their land without their consent. The local government is not allowed to do that. So tribes can do that, but that's not an option for the local government. So anything funding on the local government level, currently you are seeing the Reconnect Fund or RDOF fund. Those household currently doesn't have any connectivity. They will be connected through different federal funding, but they cannot apply for BEAD funding. So you as a tribe has a unique opportunity right here to correct your map and make sure that every single household in your tribe is connected. Next slide, please. Okay, so we recently published a market sounding map. So what is the market sounding map? So it's kind of look like this on your right side. We divided the whole state into 65 project area. Again, this is not a mandatory step by NTIA. What we did was publish this map. You can click on your tribe and that will show you how many household is eligible for BEAD funding, how many community anchor institute is eligible for BEAD funding. And then you can click on that, register and send us a comment saying that, hey, this looks good, or we want you to modify, or we want you to divide our tribes in in multiple project area. So there are a lot of options in there. We posted some of the data as well. If you have your own GIS department, you can download this data. These data are not final. The location you're going to see on the map are not final. This is what we submitted post-challenge process to NTIA. NTIA is still reviewing that data. So number of unserved, underserved households can change, but this is the best case we have at this point, 174,000 households eligible for BEAD funding. The market sounding will be open for 45 days. We opened it almost 10 days ago. It will go through November 7th. So by that time, we're trying to collect all the feedback you have. Next slide, please. Okay, so once the market sounding we open the market sounding, we're currently also trying to launch the pre-registration or pre-qualification, where you as an ISP or tribal government will qualify yourself to apply for BEAD funding. If you're an ISP, you want to apply in different tribal area for BEAD funding, you can register. One registration would be good enough because it's a company-wide registration, not a project area-wide registration. And then if you're a tribal entity who wants to authorize an ISP to apply on your behalf, you can do that as well. Then you don't need to submit all of these documents. You can basically give them a authorization and they can apply on your behalf. We will publish the final project area on round 1. So if December 1st, we open up the project area for round 1, that would be the final project area. And late November or beginning of December to mid-June, we will run 2 rounds of application where we'll select the subgrantee. Round 1 is all fiber application. That means if you have 200 households on your tribal land, we would like to see a proposal of all fiber. That means connect every single household with fiber. If that's not a possibility and you feel like you're crossing the threshold, because on round 1 application, for every project area, we will put a dollar value. That means that's our benchmark, that's our costing. And we would expect that your deployment would limit within that number. If that's not possible, you can submit a mixed fiber and mixed wireless technology proposal. That is completely allowable as well. We will just not consider that on round 1. We'll just take that application and keep it for round 2. In round 2, you will see a direct approval coming for that project. So you don't need to reapply again on round 2. Round 1, as per the NOFO and as per Arizona Volume 1, is all fiber application. So you will see a certain portion of the application is getting approved on round 1, which is all fiber and meet our benchmark. And then you will see the mixed technology ones is moving to round 2. Any household which is not getting picked on round 1 and round 2, very rural or remote ones, excuse me, will be directly moved to satellite. So those households will not directly be connected. We can retain those funding on our side, and the households which are eligible for satellite, they will send us a request, or they will send a request to the certain satellite company State Broadband Office will partner up with, and they will be able to send the kit out and come and install it for you, for the households.
Sandeep?
Yes.
How long do you see when do you see the pre-registration timeline ending?
That's a great question. So we are trying to limit it or close it right before our round 1. So if the pre-registration is, we're opening our round 1 in December 1st, we'll try to close it on November 28th, giving us 72 hours to kind of review it and approve you or like not approve you. We want to approve everyone, but I would say as soon as possible is better. If you are stuck somewhere and have a question regarding your financial or what document to upload, we are here. We have a advisory team, consulting team who can help you answer all of your question and go from there. There is no pass or fail in here. If someone uploads a document that's not what we are expecting, we'll send it back to them to provide another correction or revision, something like that. But once you are pre-approved, you can apply for all 65 project area or 66 project area. It's up to your discretion at this point. So 72 hours before round 1, we will close the pre-registration. Next slide, please. That's all we have for today, and happy to answer any question.
Kevin Shives from Yavapai Apache Nation. is this an online application for pre-registration or do
Yes.
we, oh, okay, because
So
and then do we send our,
no,
Do we send our
it's the
tribal-
online application actually.
and we have a letter of authorization that would like to challenge the ISPs? Are we formulate the letter, of course, but then we email it to somebody here or the broadband or?
Okay, I think we are thinking of two different questions. Okay, the question number one, when you are saying that if you have a federal funding on your land, you are not aware of, how can you take that area off, right? That's a letter you can directly provide to Kelly. She will be leading in partnership with this effort with Tribal Ready, so you can provide it to them. Or you can directly email it to Kelly or broadband@azcommerce.com, however you want to do that. But for the whole grants, we recently signed a contract with a national company where the grants map will be hosted, pre-registration will be hosted, and it's a series of questions this time. You will be uploading documents. It's a very interactive tool was developed to make sure that we are not missing anything in the process. So you will click on the interactive project area. It will take you to the application. You can submit application from there. Any communication during the procurement time, any technical issue, everything will be communicated through there. If we have any question on round one, you will see question coming through. You will get an email notification, but you will respond to us through that cloud portal. And that's the same portal which will be used to manage the grant for next 8 years. So it's all in one right there. Yes, sir.
Brian Thomason with Navajo Tribal Utility Authority. I'm sorry if this question's already been asked.
No, that's absolutely fine. Any questions welcome.
Interested in understanding more about the transport piece for that last mile and how that might be included in the BEAD.
That's a great question. So BEAD funding, when you read the NOFO, you get a vibe that it's only for households. It is true, it's for households. But one thing which is a little bit complicated in the NOFO, and I want to clarify that. If there is no middle mile, it doesn't matter what you are doing in last mile. It can be a wireless connectivity, it can be a fiber to home. It's not happening. And middle mile is an existential burdensome for the ISPs. So for Arizona, the way we designed our thing, when you are providing us a proposal, you're going to provide us that proposal on a household level. That means how much you are spending to connect every single household. However, if that community or that group of household needs some kind of transport to connect it with the tower so that you can distribute signals through wirelessly from the tower, or if that kind of household, those cluster of household need some kind of transport to connect them with, create a hub and connect them with fiber to home, that will also be funded through BEAD. 3 conditions need to be met before you fund a middle mile project as part of the last mile in BEAD. 1, there is no middle mile. That's a slam dunk. We have to build middle mile. The second thing is there is a middle mile which is out of capacity. So that allows you to also build a middle mile as part of this effort. And there is a middle mile which is the provider who has the middle mile is asking for an exorbitant amount of cost, which is technically not feasible from your business operational viability standpoint. So you write a justification letter and you submit that to us. In that cases, we'll be able to build a middle mile. If there is a middle mile which is open access and you are not tapping into that because you as an internet service provider, I'm just generally speaking, want to build a middle mile, that won't be supported. However, if these 3 conditions met, then we'll be happy to do that. When we are talking about middle mile or any transport, it can connect a tower and you can distribute from there. It can connect a data center or a hub in region so that you can do fiber to home from there. So it is supported. All you have to do, dilute that number into per household.
Thank you very much. I have a follow-up question.
Yes, please.
If I can. The project areas that you described, I'll just say the Navajo Nation.
Yeah.
The application for BEAD funding, does that need to include the entire project area for the nation, every household with internet?
Yes. Yes.
It needs to be served initially in phase 1 with fiber in order to qualify for phase 1?
So the way it works, from the compliance standpoint, yes. The answer of your question is when you are providing us an application, you have to provide us an application to connect every single household. Now, we can come back later on through the review process saying that Navajo Nation has this amount of household, and out of that, you said 8,000 household is below our threshold or our benchmark. 2,000 is above our benchmark. What's the redundancy plan for that? So at that point, you can switch to wireless technology to bring down the deployment cost below our threshold, or at that point, if you feel like, well, this doesn't even make sense, because given that Navajo Nation's vast geographic area, sometimes building a $500,000 tower or $1 million tower doesn't even make sense to connect two households. That's when we switch to alternative technology, which is satellite. But primary expectation is you would send us a proposal to connect every single household.
In the application, is there an expectation that, I presume there's an end date, I'll start there, when all this BEAD funding needs to put in place and these households served? This is an end date for the project to be complete.
Like any deadline for the, yes, June 30th, 2030, so 4 years.
And during that project phase to June 2030, is there an expectation to put in a schedule of projects, say on an annualized basis, that we would report on?
Yes. So technically there is no, you can finish the project in 4 years. There is no restriction from our side, because we understand that the permitting can be a huge burden and it can take time. It can be a time consuming process. What we did into our volume 2, we said, if you are an ISP and within a project area, you feel like considering all the situation, you can finish the project in 2 years, you get extra points. But anything after that, you will submit as a proposal that how you're going to finish the whole project in 4 years. But we completely do understand that how the timeline can change. Our commitment to federal government is to finish those projects in 4 years. So if you're saying first year is engineering design and permitting, and somehow we cross, that happens in 18 months, not in 12 months, because again, the application that can be very volatile, the deadlines are. That is completely fine on our side. Our target, we will be your partner in this process. We are just not going to give funding to the ISPs and then let them build it. Our State Broadband Office's opportunity at that time will be shifting our focus and help our subgrantees so that they can build this network. A lot of the permitting application, we are planning to have an advisory consultant on our side. We'll be reviewing those permitting applications along with you, along with the State Broadband Office, so that we're all in agreement this is the best course scenario. Again, we are there to help you. We're not there to tell you what to do, what not to do, and make sure that you are in the process. And there will be monitoring when you receive this money, how much money you are spending, you're reimbursing those dollars, and so that we can provide you reimbursement, how many jobs you are creating in that particular area, is there any roadblock you are facing? So those will all be, we'll be working with you as a partner.
Last question.
Absolutely, please.
It's kind of a lead-in you gave me to the funding piece, but I want to first state that the Navajo Tribal Utilities Authority works through the Navajo Nation Broadband Office.
Right.
Some of those individuals may be on this call, I presume they are, but my last question is related to the funding. When you look at the transport piece that might be required, the middle mile that you mentioned, that can take time to put in, but can also be expensive. So I'm curious about the sequence of funding, how that happens. Does it happen on an annualized basis? Does it happen as each project is completed? That's part of the plan that's submitted. How does that work?
That's another great question. So really appreciate you are asking this question. It happens in a reimbursement basis. So you don't have to complete a milestone of a project to get reimbursement. You can basically submit a receipt of like a month worth of receipt saying that this is how much we spend in this month. And that doesn't have to be related to infrastructure. It can be your permitting application. It can be your salary to your employees. Whatever you are adding in that application, the initial application can be reimbursed. So what happened to give you a real life example, for the CPF grant, the $100 million grant Arizona State disbursed for broadband project, currently in the process of connecting 47,000 households. So what happened for those projects, for first almost 6 to 8 months, we didn't see any reimbursement request because people are probably going through the engineering drawing or permitting application, which is a very significantly low amount of money. Now we are seeing those reimbursement requests. Now they're putting the fibers on ground, buying fibers, electronics. So now big amount of chunks of requests are coming. to make things friendly to the ISPs. There are a lot of ISPs who go through quarterly process. There are ISPs who goes through monthly process. They might have that kind of cash sitting in their bank account. But there are ISPs who have cash only for 1 month. So we can do it in 2 weeks basis. We try to do it in monthly basis. So it's less like hassle for all of us, less review for all of us. We can go quarterly, monthly, but we also want to see reimbursement happening, because if the reimbursement didn't happen, federal government get nervous, we get nervous, where the money is going, why no one is reimbursing, are you in a situation of verge of being defaulted or something like that. So that is one of our concerns. So to answer your question, you can do it in monthly basis, you can do it in quarterly basis, you can do it less than month. Just however your situation is, you have to communicate that to a state broadband office, and we stand here to help you. As far as you are within the project boundary, within the project budget, what you proposed and your grant got approved, we have no issues to support you with the funding. Yes.
Ophelia from Havasupai has a question. Any extensions? We have already asked for them and may need another with our current TDCP money.
Basically, we are 6 years away from the deadline. The federal government told us to finish all the project, and every state the deadline is different based on when their volume 2 was approved. So it's not similar across the board. So Arizona's BEAD infrastructure need to be built by June 30th, 2030. And then we have 1.5 years on our side to complete the monitoring, close out report, and send it to federal government. I'm not sure, that's not a question we can answer at this point. The extension doesn't come from us. We are an intermediary factor who takes the extension request, send it to NTIA for an extension request. So it is very early in the process to basically answer that question. Yes.
Hi, this is Dawn. I have a question. So, thinking about all this fiber that's being laid, it doesn't lay itself, and there's people involved in laying the fiber. Tribal communities have tribal employment rights offices. For our tribe, we've also got funding from EDA to develop a trades training center, and it's going to be available for anybody because it's through EDA. And we're purchasing 2 pieces of the heavy equipment used for, I think it's directional drilling for fiber, and I forgot, I have them right here on this piece of paper. But so is there support within the ACC for this type of component of providing skills to people to learn how to, so we were actually approached by Cox Communication. We also have a 8A tribal construction company, and they had asked us to help build fiber from Tucson all the way to Mexico a couple of years ago. And we tried to get training for our staff. There was no training available within Pima County, and there was ones, in other states. So we kind of brought it home. But is there funding out there? Because there's a few things that didn't get funded that I would like to add within this BEAD or the other, big bucket. I'd like to understand if we're going to be able to do that, because I do know that we got fiber in one of our offices. It took 6 months to get somebody out there in the middle of Tucson to lay the fiber.
Got it.
So I don't know if there is funding within BEAD or another area with ACC with the broadband that I can look into.
That's a great question. Actually, that's a huge headache, if I can say that, for us as well. So when you hear BEAD funding and where it's incepted from, it came from IIJA, that means Infrastructure and Jobs Act. The biggest or largest KPI out of BEAD funding, when you are building infrastructure, there are two major KPIs. How many households you are connecting, or are you connecting all the households within that project area, and how you are connecting that. And the second thing is how many jobs you are creating. So the this funding we're spending, the $1 billion here in Arizona, need to be tied up with how many jobs we are creating. So your question is completely valid. Unfortunately, the BEAD funding we have currently doesn't have any mechanism. It's solely for infrastructure. You can pay your staff, your employees who are involved in this BEAD project and who will be building this network, but there is no job training program available right now. What we are trying to do, there is a separate funding our office is also managing called digital equity funding. So state of Arizona received $16 million in digital equity. I know it's a very small amount compared to the $1 billion we got in infrastructure, but that one will have some funding, again, not a significant amount of funding, to develop some kind of workforce-related training program with the community college in partnership with the community colleges, local nonprofits, and organizations who can train these folks, and this workforce can be used for expansion of the BEAD funding. So that's exactly our target is. But then again, I think the main constraint is funding. So out of that $16 million, we are focusing on digital literacy program around here in the state, digital navigator program in partnership with the tribal chapter houses or tribal government or libraries, so that people know how they have internet, how to use that internet effectively, the distance learning program, the telemedicine program. So when you think about multiple buckets, the $16 million really shrinks from there. So we're trying to create the best output from that $16 million when it comes to workforce, but that's, I know not the answer you want to hear, but that's the limited funding. That's our answer at this point. But this is definitely important, what you just mentioned.
So, for us to ask wouldn't be like a huge ask. I mean, we have been funded really very well from EDA. Actually, they gave us $4 million to develop the state-of-the-art trades training center available for, the community. And so thank you for that. And I mean, every little bit helps when you're trying to develop training programs, because it's not really lucrative, but yet it's needed. So thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Hey, Sandeep, this is Joe Valandra. I'd like to circle back to the pre-qualification discussion just a bit, focusing on the matching funds, because that can be, it may be daunting for some tribal applicants to figure out how those matching funds work and where they'll come from in particular. I understand, and we're working again in other areas where the working assumption is that tribal entities will be eligible for a waiver of the matching requirement. Could you speak a little bit more to that, please?
Joe, I'm not totally following what.
Okay, the 25% matching requirement for BEAD. There is an understanding, although it hasn't been put into practice yet, obviously, because BEAD funding hasn't been granted. Applications are just now being thought about, that tribes are eligible for a waiver of the matching requirement under BEAD. And you're asking in the pre-qualification for tribes to substantiate where the matching funds will come from. If a tribe is going to request a waiver of those matching funds, how does that impact the pre-qualification process?
It doesn't. So technically, for the pre-qualification phase, you don't have to exactly show us the fund, but if you have a letter from your financial institute saying that you have enough money to provide 25% matching, you have like bank solvency, that's good enough to approve you. It's a volatile number, so we can play with that number. Doesn't have to be. Sorry, it doesn't. Joe, did you get a chance to hear what I said? I just figured out.
Yes,
okay.
I heard most of that, and I also
right.
Well, but if the tribe's answer to the question is we are going to apply for a waiver, is that a sufficient answer in the pre-application process?
No, it's not. From the pre-application perspective, it's just the security of the funding we are looking for. It doesn't have to be a lot of money, but if it's a medium, basically what the 25% matching is required on their side, they can put in there. Again, these are all volatile points. I don't think we're going to hold anyone accountable who cannot provide like millions of dollars as a matching fund. So we'll most probably approve them and make sure that tribes has the same equal opportunity for like any other ISP ISP who can participate, but there is still, this is a requirement happening in the pre-registration phase. But then after the round one happened, they can apply for a waiver at this point for the high cost areas. And waiver for, during the round one, they can apply for a waiver for the matching grant. But for pre-qualification phase, this is standard procedure for all the ISPs and tribal government. They have to show us some funding that they have ability to provide the matching.
Okay, so the documentation can be fairly minimal. I'm just trying to clarify for the tribes listening. I mean, the tribe could say, yes, we can provide the matching funds, and then you still need something, but you don't necessarily need a bank commitment or a segregation of funds or anything like that. Is that correct?
We do need bank statement, not statement, I would say it's like security of funding. There are more guidelines coming to that. I don't want to downplay that option because this is a requirement by NTIA.
Right.
This is a financial security from the State Broadband Office. So there will be some sort of financial commitment and a certification will be needed. Again, this doesn't have to be a broadband dedicated fund. This can be a overall fund from a bank statement or a financial institution letter for the whole tribe saying that, hey, we have this funding, we are good to go. That's good enough. It doesn't have to be a dedicated fund towards the broadband. But what I'm saying, no, the letter will only not suffice. In this case, there will be additional document which is needed. Tribes are most welcome to apply, or any high cost areas are most welcome to apply for a waiver application. That happens during round one. So we know that you have ability to participate and you have ability to provide 25% matching. The waiver application ones that kick in round one, that's when we decide, okay, do we want to have that money? Do we don't want to have that money? And all of this matching funding we're talking about, nothing kicks in until we sign the agreement. And the agreement signature doesn't happen until 2026. The thing is approved, the final proposal is approved. No, so we will be, to answer your question, we will be needing some kind of financial solvency from the bank or financial institute or credit union or some kind of documentation which shows that tribes has enough money, or any ISP or anyone applying. I wouldn't, in this case, I wouldn't classify tribe or non-tribal entity as a different. We would just say that's the amount a potential subgrantee need to show us so that they can apply for BEAD funding. Again, it doesn't have to be on the state level. It can be a overall funding. A funding they have from SLFRF can be used. A funding they have from IRA, Inflation Reduction Act, ARPA can be used as matching, just to show us that we are capable of providing this matching.
Okay, yeah, I just think that's an important point and could be a stopping point for some tribes if it's not fully understood. So thank you. Thank you.
If there is a waiver needed at that point, we didn't think about that part yet. We can handle that separately, but it is very important because the reason it's very important, we can apply, we can say that, hey, we don't need to see any documentation. Then we went ahead, we applied for, any subgrantee apply for this grant, they get this grant. And then we are applying for a waiver to NTIA. What if that waiver doesn't get approved by NTIA? Then in that case, basically, we just lost an opportunity to serve a whole tribe or a project area. So we are doing our due diligence on our side. If the NTIA doesn't approve the waiver, in that case, the tribe or the potential subgrantee has enough money to connect that project area. So that's the checks and balance we are putting on place so that they can be connected.
Yes, I understand the programmatic ins and outs of that. So, but I just wanted to make sure that the participants on the call had more information about the waiver and how it applies in particular to the pre-application or to the pre-qualification process that you're running right now. So,
got it.
Yeah, and I have one other question for you. You brought up across many of the early slides about sustainability, and what type of documentation are you looking for there? Are you looking for a business model, a business plan, a forecast, all of the above? What sorts of things are you looking for when you're evaluating sustainability?
We don't need to evaluate or need any documentation regarding sustainability during the application from any subgrantees. We are reviewing it on our side to see what's the take rate on that area based on the socioeconomic index and trying to see if it's a fiber to home for all household in this project area is a feasible thing. They don't need to submit anything from the sustainability standpoint. As we talked about the sustainability of the network and everything in this forum, and as we are not providing any funding towards sustainability, it's technically that's not something in our wheelhouse, or we have obligation to check for any potential subgrantee.
Okay, thank you. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Sandy, while I've been managing chat and things like that, I haven't heard all of the questions, but did you touch on letters of consent and letters of support?
I didn't. So that's a very important thing. So there are two very important piece of this whole tribal funding or tribal project area. One is letter of support. So if you are a tribal entity and you are applying for, or tribal government, you are applying for tribal, the BEAD funding, what you can do, if you are a tribal government, you will have a letter from President's office. So in this case, it's a really straightforward thing. But for some reason, if you're authorizing a ISP, or as a tribal government, you are authorizing your IT department to apply on your behalf, we'll be needing a letter from the tribal government saying that you are authorized to apply. That's a support letter that gives you 5 points during the evaluation. So that's one advantage. And also we know that you are the authorized party to apply on behalf of so-and-so tribe. That's one thing. What we will be doing as well is collecting a consent letter from the tribal government. So this consent letter allow us to deploy BEAD funding on tribal letter. This is very important to understand. One is for us, so we can show it to NTIA that we are allowed to give the tribe BEAD funding, and that's our authorization letter. And the authorization letter, suppose NTUA is go to ISP, if or telecom provider for Navajo Nation. So when you are applying, you will still need a letter so that tribal government is supporting you. So that is a scoring criteria, and that is important. But at the end of the day, before we submit the final proposal to NTI, we'll directly reach out to Navajo Nation, and you don't have to do anything about that. And Navajo Nation government or council will provide us a resolution or a letter saying that State of Arizona, or SCA, Arizona Commerce Authority, we're allowing you to deploy this BEAD funding on our land. So these are two pieces of the letter. One is consent letter, another one is the support letter. So I just wanted to create a clear clarification and boundary between these two things.
So quick clarification of that. The consent letter that you obtained from the tribal government, is it going to be just a general statement that it's not going to be specific to a provider?
No. It's a general statement which allows us to support the provider who got approved on that specific tribal land to deploy BEAD funding. Same thing goes for tribe, like in your situation. If you don't want any of the BEAD funding because you are almost connected and you are thinking of connecting that 17 community anchor institute with your own funding, with your own expansion, then you can just provide us a letter. That letter needs to be certified by Hillary for governor, saying that we are not planning to apply for BEAD funding. Here is our letter. So some kind of consent so that we can, again, this is not mandatory. It's good for us as a partner to show federal government they're fully served. They don't want to apply for BEAD funding. So this is going back to the basic, right? There are a lot of federal funding which was applied on tribal land without the tribal consent. And we are not different. We as a state, it's not like we have a special power. We can go to tribal land and deploy money. So we need the same kind of consent from tribal government so then we can deploy the BEAD funding.
Just about to put this in the chat. This is Kelly, and the letters of consent will be coming out soon. Those will be sent to every tribe and tribal nation and community in Arizona, and I would expect those in the next week or two. We do want to get those out quickly, and it will have the information. It will guide you through like the information that we need to collect from you and give you your next steps. And then we ask for that to be returned to us so that we can have that on record and have an understanding of what it is that your tribe is interested in and the needs for moving forward.
And if you don't see that or don't find it, please contact Kelly or us. We're here to make sure that you get it and answer any questions as it relates to the letter. And during market sounding, if you have any questions or want to meet with us individually, we're available in this to answer any of the questions that you have.
Yes, this
Kelly.
is Joe Belandra. I'd like to echo that too. Thank you for bringing that up. There is a draft letter, as Kelly just said, that will be sent to you all, so you can understand the categories of information that the ACA needs to move forward with the planning process. And I'll also echo, if you have any questions that you think that you'd like to direct to us to help with that letter, or just questions in general, please reach out to Tribal Ready, and we're here to help you too. So thank you.
Kelly, will that letter go only to the tribe, or will, in our situation, would it come to us as well so that we can address it with the tribe?
That's a very good question. And at this point, the letter is addressed to tribal leaders. So, but again, we are open to, if it needs to be sent in a broader manner. And Joe, I don't know if you want to weigh in on that. But at this point, it is addressed to tribal leaders, and we do need a response from tribal leaders. We understand that it's a conversation. It isn't just one person making the decision. It's a conversation for the tribe.
Well, I will say this, that we'll have access to the letter itself, to the form letter. So if you don't receive it, certainly you can contact Kelly and her staff, or you can contact us, and we can make sure that you see what's contained in that letter.
What I'm hearing is that we should maybe spread this far and wide.
Yeah, it would be helpful.
I think that's a great idea. I think the more places you could touch at the same time, the more likelihood is that you'll get the response back that you need. So,
okay, thanks, Joe.
It would be helpful for those of us that have a tribal communications company if we could be copied on that as well, so that we can engage our tribal leaders with that consent letter.
That can be done easily. I think that's a good approach. So you are our ally, our partner, so your voice matters.
And any suggestions like that are helpful, especially during market sounding, but we want to make sure that we're getting the message to the right people and the right partners. So thank you for your feedback. We have open ears.
Yeah, our tribal leaders will look at it and say, oh yeah, we don't need to do it.
Okay.
Excellent feedback. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I don't see any other questions in the chat. I see a hand raised in the room. I will stop talking and turn it over.
Another question is, I was just doing some quick calculations here. Is there any limitation to any one entity as far as funding levels in their application process?
Oh, sorry, what kind of limitation you're saying?
Is there any limitation to funding levels that one entity might be granted through their application?
No, it's a if you're qualified, you can take the whole state.
No, I'm talking about a particular project area, down to that area.
Oh yeah, so when you see the final project area, you will see that there is a dollar value tag to every single project area. So that's our benchmark, and we will try not to cross that benchmark. Again, in some cases, it's up to the negotiation. If our vision and your view is completely different, we are happy to sit down and talk about it. But that's basically our assessment from our side, that how we divided the $1 billion for that project area, and how much based on the household, how much money that project area should get. So basically, if it's crossed the threshold we are talking about, definitely that has to be moved to an alternative technology, which is less than that. But that's our assessment to make sure that every single household within that particular geographical area will be connected with high-speed fiber.
Do you have a standard amount, say, per household that you calculate for each area, or is it different depending upon?
We did. So that calculation is ready. But again, this is market sounding. No state is releasing that number. It will be released during the round one. And you are not you're going to see that not every household has the same amount of number. Household in a close cluster will have lower amount of number. Household which is far from the close cluster will be a different amount of number. There will be not an average number. However, what you can do, you as an ISP, you can always come back with a proposal saying that, hey, we're averaging it out. We meet your standard, but for some of the household, it's not meeting the individual standard. So that a discussion point we can discuss. And the number you will see during round one application is a combined number. That doesn't represent number from ACA or government subsidy, and that doesn't represent your 25% matching. So it's the total number. So when you are applying for that project area, given that the regular basic NOFO, you will be liable to provide 25% of matching, and then rest will come from ACA. So if you look at a project area, it's $100 million project area, it's $25 million will come from you, and then $75 million will come from us. Now, you have full liberty to apply for a waiver in round one, saying that we cannot provide this $25 million. This is what we can do. What's going to happen, we'll take your application, send it to NTIA for further approval. If they don't approve it, we cannot provide that match.
Understood. I'd like to follow up on that question. I'll go back
Sure.
to the transport piece. When those dollar amounts per household are ultimately shared, and we understand what they are, will that include the transport piece
Yes.
that might be required?
Yes, so if there is no transport, we took that into consideration and we calculated how much money it would cost us to build the transport and then diluted that number in per household. So you will not see a different line item in the map for transport. That will be diluted. So when you see the per household number, when you hover your mouse on the household, you have to assume that this also considered transport or any other factor. We have terrain and everything else in that particular community or project area.
Okay, thank you.
And before we conclude, Crystal brought up a great idea, which is going through a demo of the Arizona Broadband Navigator. And I'm hesitating now because I don't know how to share your screen. So hold on. What?
I'm logged in, so if you stop sharing, I can share.
Okay,
And
we'll
walk
see
us
if that
through it.
works. Please stand by.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, so I'm Crystal Severus. I'm with the ACA. I am the GIS analyst on the broadband team. I'm going to show you our Arizona Broadband Navigator. It's the same platform that we used for the challenge process, and we've gone ahead and recycled it so that we could collect your feedback during market sounding in the Navigator. Everything's secure. You'll be able to comment on our project areas, view the number of BEAD eligible locations, and all of that. So first, I tell folks to start at our Arizona broadband page. From here, if you go to BEAD, you'll see this new subdomain called market sounding. This is where all the information for market sounding lives. I'm going to go ahead and show you right here is where the broadband navigator link is. But we also have some additional resources here. There's a navigator user guide. There's also some pretty dense data here. So if you have a GIS team and you're wanting to do this sort of analysis in your own internal systems, you can download this information here and map it in your own GIS. But all of that data is already available in the Navigator. So here is the Navigator. It defaults to this tab up top. It's called eligibility. So everything related to project areas in BEAD eligibility is going to be right here. After Ophelia's question, I became hyper-focused on Havasu Pi, so I'm going to go ahead and use that as an example. So Ophelia pointed out that there are pretty much no locations eligible for BEAD funding. So we'll go ahead and take a look at that really quickly. So this data in here, everything from the challenge process is still stored here. Ophelia, I just wanted to let you know, there is a huge amount of EACAM funding. So maybe you want to talk to Joseph about that afterwards. All right, so let's go ahead and just use this as an example. Unfortunately, there's no BEAD eligible locations. If there were, you would see that right here on the left-hand side. So because we determine BEAD eligible status post-challenge process, that challenge process information and post-deduplication information is going to be shown here. So if there were any challenges submitted to us, along with all of that applicable evidence that was needed, and we approved that challenge for planned service challenge, you would see that here. So if there was a provider that had claimed that they were going to plan service here and we accepted those challenges, you would see that here. You can also see the number of ineligible locations because they're served. Notice there are no served locations in Havasu Pi. So let me just say that served here is talking about availability. So if a location receives greater than or equal to 100 by 20 service, it's served per the FCC's definition of served. Now that we're going into the BEAD subgrantee selection process, I think we're kind of using this term to say a location is served if it's federally funded or state funded, or if there's some sort of planned service being available there. So here are the number of locations that are not eligible for BEAD because they're already funded. Oops, sorry. Let me just use my mouse pad. So I'm happy to go over another example of that, but basically, each time you click on one of these project areas, you can get that detailed BEAD information. Oh, I got a question. Sure. Remind me where that's at? Did you say Halalapai? Yavapai County. Okay, you mean the county or the tribe? The county, right? Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry, Apache Nation, okay. Is this Fort Apache? Sorry, I'm struggling with geography right now.
You said California?
Yeah, Verde.
Area?
Better tell on the map, like.
I saw it once and then it disappeared.
There you go.
Oh my gosh. Is this right here?
You got Clark though right there.
Oh, I see. Yeah, this is spread out. This is unique. Okay, sorry about that. So let's just say, so I see a couple of selections here. I don't know if I accidentally selected this one too. This looks like a, yep. So when we were doing this, when we were creating project areas, we made sure that a tribe remained unioned. So if you are checkerboarded, it's one project area. It's just multi-feature. So okay, well, congratulations. Okay, oops. Let's go back to that. Well, sometimes it wants to participate, sometimes it doesn't. There we go. Okay, so we'll use this as an example. So a lot of 65% is eligible for BEAD. So 258 locations. 77 of those locations are ineligible because they're served by another technology. So that means the FCC currently is showing that a provider has filed that they serve 77 of these locations with a reliable technology that are equal to or greater than 100 by 20. So if you want to explore like which locations these are, you can go ahead and zoom in and see that more granular data. So you'll see these points. The red means that it's not eligible for BEAD funding. The bluish green points right here means that they are eligible for BEAD funding. And if I click on one of these, because I'm curious why, you'll see Sparklight Cable.
So in this example, as we see, it's reddish orange. Tap, that's all it is. They lay claim in the form. Yeah, we can service it, but they still have to construct it out from tap, down the streets, on the pole, everywhere. And so that's one of my intentions of, I'm probably submitting a letter challenging this because they didn't go through our tribal council to get approval. And that's where I think where we come in with that letter, working with Tribal Ready to give to.
Yeah.
It goes back in.
Yeah, I'm not sure if Joseph can hear, but basically the comment was the Sparklight provider. Okay, go ahead.
Hello, this is Kevin from Yavapai, Apache Nation. So yes, in this upper quadrant there, it's reddish orange, which is supposedly laying claim that an internet service provider, it's called Sparklight. They have a tap, that's all they have. And I've called and made some inquiries as to how, if we needed to, how do we get it serviced? Can I get it tomorrow? And then the answer was no, we just have a tap. We don't have anything in your streets. We don't have anything in the poles. That's another construction cost that we have to look at. So I said, so within a week, you can't get it in here? No. So those are my challenges. So I might need to go through a process of saying, one, you didn't consent with the tribe to get authorization to provide us internet there. Two is, again, you couldn't service us within a time frame anyway. So third is that area is blasted with other technologies too. So wireless, our aim is for fiber. And so our qualification, even if it was saying wireless is an option, that's not our option. Our option as a tribe is to become sovereign and do what we would like to do, which is what I would think the BEAD was going to help us to provide. So if I wanted to have fiber in that location to every home, government building, I should have that availability or ask. And so again, it's nice to see that there's an option still. I know these challenge processes are hairy, and even for us as a challenge, it was a physical challenge due to monsoons collecting data. And so these challenges continue to pop up because as time goes on, these internet service providers are doing what they can do with their own time frame and their own deadlines. Again, as time moves, things change. Eventually that'll be green. But as an example, I just wanted to show that it is showing this is what we use the map for. I can see that it needs to be challenged, so we'll go through the proper channels using BEAD when we come to that point.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that you're aware of the proper channels. And Joe, I hate to put you on the spot. Are you going to be able to walk tribes through this?
Yes.
Okay.
And in fact, that's one of the things that we're here to do. So with this information, there are a couple different avenues for the challenge. I mean, first is consent, and we'll have to tailor the letter so that consent covers the tribal portion of this map. But the other part of the challenge process, we can definitely help with, and we will.
So.
And we are fiber first, so we support that. We're here for that process.
According to Sparklight, that's still RG6 cable modem. So still sharing still like you're still sharing the same data path instead of being symmetrical.
So in this example, and what might be helpful even for you is to get an idea of the funding that is going to be available for this tribe based on the current eligible locations. That way they have an idea or could calculate kind of the funding per location that is eligible right now. So is there a way to see what funding is available for the current eligible locations? How do you do that?
So if you want to see that, well, I always consult the map first. It gives you the ability to play around and figure out what's going on with the area that you're interested in. So we have these funding layers here. These were provided to us by NTIA and the FCC. So this is, we're kind of saying like it's our authoritative data set of current funding in Arizona. We're actually going to see some updates to the TBCP data according to NTIA. They just emailed me that. We should see it in a week or two. So we'll see some updates there. But so you got a strange RDOF chunk here. But if we take a look at it, yeah, let's see. GeoLinks is claiming that they are funded through RDOF in this little section. So Joe and the Tribal Ready team have all of this data. And I believe it's their plan to walk through this with you already. So this is how you can see, based on the FCC broadband funding data and what we've received from NTIA, because they're the grant administrator for TBCP. This is the status of funding in Arizona. And if they didn't receive consent, if it's not accurate, you're going to want to definitely flag that for us.
So the Yavapai Apache Nation, though, like if we go back out, they do have some eligible locations in kind of another quadrant or whatever. So I guess what I was trying to find out is how much BEAD funding are we saying that is available for them to build out to those eligible BEAD locations that are there right now?
I'm going to divert to Sandeep. So the thing that is you're not going to see in the Navigator is any kind of cost. And the reason that we're doing that is because during the round one is when we want internet service providers to basically divulge to us based on our internal processes, this is how much we think it is.
No, you're right on point, Crystal. It was intentional not to put any financial number because we want to make process really competitive, as Crystal mentioned. One thing I want to highlight for Yavapai Apache, same thing, they have some funding from other federal project which was applied without their consent. So you can basically submit, open up, and then start simulating that how much money you will be spending. Again, we are not asking for engineering design, what you are saying from a desktop review process, how much money you think they will be needing connecting these households. And during the market sounding, you can actually give us that number. And we can see and probably a very basic math for anyone in Arizona and in all 50 states, I would say is have $1 billion and then have 174,000 households. So kind of divided by that number, and that's the threshold. But when you are also calculating threshold, you are thinking of different other factors like workforce, salary, your regional office for next 4 years, project management, cost of fiber, cost of electronics and everything. So it's all diluted in that value. So if your number, that's why I said, if your expectation does not match with what we are putting as a benchmark, we can definitely have that conversation during round one. But at this point, it would be basically you applying to the eligible location so that we can all fiber design and we can go from there. Again, if you want to integrate, you think that all fiber is not possible from a feasibility or operational standpoint for this infrastructure, and you want to add alternative technology as a tribe, like 60% fiber, 40% wireless, you are most welcome to do that. We will move that application on round 2 and we will not approve it on round 1, but there is a 99% chance it would get approved on round 2. Yes, sorry, let me. Could
you please repeat that formula?
Sure. The the easy formula is the $993 million you are seeing. That funding also include our office's budget to run this $1 billion program. And that's an extensive amount of cost, of course. So I would say the easy thing, if you have a license, the best way to access how much money your community should get or would get is the cost quest analysis. So if you have a cost quest license and you go there is an option where you can download the cost quest analysis. The 174,000 households we are talking about, you as an ISP will see the same number. And then you will see an analysis right next to it, which will exactly show you that how much money state of Arizona is planning to spend per household. Again, they did not consider any terrain, any permitting backlogs or anything in that process. They just give us a very slam dunk number, like $5,000, $6,000 per household to connect it with fiber. The number you're gonna see in that portal is basically a number for fiber connectivity. You can take that number and start simulation from there. We went a little bit extra above and beyond, added a middle mile into consideration, added terrain into consideration, digging cost, overhead, underground, all these factors in the consideration. So that's a good way to start at this point. Yes.
I have a question.
This is Dawn. I have a question. Although, I don't come in representing my tribe, but I do know that, I'm on the Development Corporation side. But we've added a bunch of new housing, and we also have a new part of a reservation within that we just got into trust. So can our people get with your community, with your people to make sure that you have us in there correctly?
So the way new households get considered into BEAD funding is through FCC. So you as a tribe, you can submit a data to FCC directly saying that these are the new household we built. These are the addresses, these are the latitude and longitude and all other information. And you can submit that to FCC. What happens, FCC updates their map twice a year and then submit or transmit that information to the state broadband offices or any other entity. It's going to pop up into the FCC broadband map, which is publicly available. So you will add that location, then we will make sure that that location is getting rolled into the BEAD. However, I want to be very clear again, once we open round 1 in December 1st, no more location will be added. That's how the NOFO was written, and we cannot change that, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think we added almost 200,000.
I would make sure that that was added in the FCC broadband map.
Okay, I wanted to cover one last thing. So the whole purpose of the navigator, other than looking at this really granular data, was to send us your feedback on project areas that we've proposed. Let's see. So to do that, there's 2 ways to do that. First, you're going to want to sign in. To do that, you'll go ahead and let me just log out and show you what that looks like. So you'll go to sign in here. Request a new account if you don't already have one. If you've used the navigator for the challenge process, you're still a registered user and you can still log in with that account. So once you request an account, it goes to us. We pretty much update it daily. So you should see that change within 24 hours. So once you're logged in, you can start commenting on these project areas. So if you select a project area, you can download the data for that project area. It'll just be a list of location IDs and their classification. And then you also have this option right here to submit a project area comment. So this is secure. It only goes to our office. There's no, I think it's a little more secure than email. So none of your comments will be shared with anybody else, only us administrator folks. You can share your comments here and then upload any files if you need. For example, if you are an ISP and you have some concerns about certain households or cost, you can upload all kinds of evidence here. And then I just want to point this out, this disclaimer. So the BEAD eligible locations shown on our map are technically not the final list of BEAD eligible locations because we're still waiting on NTIA approval on those. And then, you know, there's everything submitted here is really just for market sounding. So it's not a way to say that you're interested in applying and for us to say, okay, yeah, you're in the hat, you know. There's a separate portal for that. This is just to collect your feedback, and your feedback can be anything. It could be on a single BSL. It could be on every project area. It's just a way for us to collect your feedback and make any changes to the project areas if there needs to be.
And if you have any questions about that in general during market. Share any questions.
Just so everybody heard online, that was Amy. She was just saying that during market sounding for the next 35 days that are left, if you have questions, reach out to us. We are available to help, especially with the tribes. We want to make sure you've got the information you need, and we are available for that. It is 11:59, Sandeep.
Right? Okay. Look, I know there are a lot of still unknowns. We're here to help you. These forums are a good kicking point for the $1 billion funding distribution. We did hold the same kind of forum with local government, tribal government, or tribal representatives at this point, and ISPs at the same time. This is the time you have basically 2 more months to select your partner. If you are an ISP, directly want to apply for BEAD funding and you are heavily relying on BEAD funding to connect your household, this is the time you want to finalize how you want to apply. You want to support an ISP to come build on their on your land, or you want to do it by yourself. Put together the necessary documentation for pre-approval. Please let us know. Happy to help. And this also opens up another opportunity to set an one-on-one meeting and ask questions which you are not comfortable asking in a public forum. So please reach out to us, reach out to Kelly, and we'll be able to put together an office hour so that we can help you with the questions, confidential question you don't want to answer. You don't want to ask.
Okay, I will also email the documents from this meeting. So the recording, the presentation, and the links to the navigator and everything, I will follow up and do that by the end of the day tomorrow. Thank you everyone for joining us online and in person. Have a good day.
Thank you everyone. Really appreciate it.